Very good evening all. On behalf of the Roja Muthiah Research Library, I welcome you all. Today, Mr. S. Theodore Bhaskar will be delivering his lectures, The Devadasi Traditions and Tamil Cinema. This is organized as part of our Madras Week celebrations. Before the lecture, may I invite Mr. S. Muthiah to say a few words about our hall and also to introduce today's speaker.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this second lecture being organized for Madras Week by the Roja Muthiah Research Library. Before I say a few words about the library, let me say a few words about Madras Week, Madras Day, Madras Week, Madras Month. Call it what you will. It is a celebration not of necessarily of the founding of a city, but it is a celebration of the city itself. To many of us, Madras is the first city of modern India. Its achievements are numerous, predating much that you will find in Calcutta, Delhi or Bombay. And these are cause for celebration, and it is this that we hope to try to celebrate on Madras Day, Madras Week, Madras Month, in what is a purely volunteer exercise. We started as a half-day exercise, and now it has grown into almost 72 weeks and goes on for almost a month, with various organizations organizing meetings, exhibitions, quizzes, debates, oratorical. It's almost, I think this year, I think there are almost 70 schools involved in various activities. So, we're basically focusing on the fact that this is a city to be proud of, and let us think of what has happened in the city over the years, and let us take pride in what it has achieved, and let's be proud of our city. That's what Madras Day, Madras Week, Madras Month is all about. As part of this activity, every year for the last few years has been the Roja Muthiah Research Library. We usually organize 3 or 4 talks. The Roja Muthiah Research Library has an interesting story by itself. It starts with a man called Roja Muthiah, no relation of mine. So we come from neighboring villages. Roja Muthiah ran a sign painting business in Madras many years ago, and his symbol was the rose on all his sign painting. That's how it became known as Roja Muthiah. He was an eclectic collector. He collected anything written in Tamil. Letters, postcards, posters, wish notices, invitations, you name it, Roja Muthiah started collecting them. And gradually he moved on to collecting books, and then when his collection became bigger and bigger and he could no longer store it in Madras, he went back to Kottayur in Chennai, and there he built up his collection there. And it became gradually over the years not only a very important collection of basically Tamil-oriented material, but it also involved many people coming down, especially from abroad, to do research work, those interested in Tamil studies. When Roja Muthiah found his family was not ready to take over and he was looking for a buyer, eventually, thanks to Chicago University, the collection was bought by the university, the trust was set up in Madras, and here we are today with the Roja Muthiah collection run by trustees who are not involved in any other thing except wanting to keep this going. This library and research institution, who Theodore was one of the founders of this institution after it was taken over. Sundar is the other one who was leading it from the beginning. They have kept this going, and today it is one of the most, from my point of view, accessible research centers in Madras. The key word is accessibility. You can go to the archives, you can go to many another library. I was just talking to 2 students. who'd gone to a couple of libraries and found they couldn't get anything out of the library. So the accessibility of the key thing was the Royal Mumbai Library, which gets numerous research scholars both locally as well as from abroad. And research work has really come out in many countries from collection in the Royal Mumbai Library. The Royal Mumbai Library, as I said, owes much to Theodore Bhaskar, who was one of the founders of the present avatar of the Royal Mumbai Library. Theodore is an old friend, believe it or not. He's talking about films today. Tomorrow he might be talking about tomorrow he might be talking about wildlife. And day after he'll be talking about a little bit of South Indian history. Theodore has a wide range of interests, but believe it or not, he was first and foremost a Postmaster General. And he, unlike many Postmaster Generals, but going back to the old generations when we had the British in various places and very senior Indian interest in a wide variety of subjects, Theodore belongs to that generation. He has an interest in several subjects. As we know today from the subject of the thing, one of them is cinema. And if I'm not correct, it was his first book, but The Message Bearers is a classic which, if you haven't read it, I strongly recommend that you read it. It is a story of, in many ways, Tamil Nadu politics, but how the role cinema played in people like India and Karnataka and all coming into politics, and how it has played a great role in affecting politics in this part of the world. But as a story of communication, it's a wonderful read, and I strongly recommend it. He followed this up with The Eye of the Serpent, an introduction to Tamil cinema, which I think is a very, very basic book that you need to read for anyone interested in Tamil cinema to get a grip on the subject. For this, he was awarded the Golden Lotus Award for the President of India. His third book on cinema was History Through the Lens, came in 2010. Unfortunately, that's a book you haven't given me a copy of. So I haven't read it. Bhaskar has been a member of the board of the National Film Archive. He was on the jury for the National Film Awards. He writes equally fluently in English and Tamil. And this, I think, is one of his great strengths. And he communicates equally fluently in both languages. In 2014, he was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award for Virudu by the Canada Literary Council in Toronto. As I've already said, he is one of the trustees of the Madras of the Royal Mumbai Library, Research Library, and I welcome him both as a trustee to a meeting that we had this morning and to today's evening lecture. Theodore, all yours.
Thank you for the kind words, Mr. Muthe. Anavaruku Vanakkam. I would like to dedicate this talk to a doyen of Devadasi community, Kusa Krishnamurthy, a scriptwriter and a songwriter, and a very good friend of mine, and from whom I learned much of what I am going to talk to you. My argument this evening is going to be very simple. Unlike in the West, silent cinema in Tamil Nadu, unlike in the West, the talkie cinema in Tamil Nadu did not grow out of silent cinema. Tamil cinema, unlike in Germany, France and England, took an abrupt turn after silent era. It took a totally new trajectory. What it did was that it adapted an already existing, a ready-made art form, complete with trained artists, writers, singers and a sound design. it was the stage plays of the company drama. These dramas were predominantly oral in nature, and they were mere vehicles for songs, rather like an opera. See, the silent era lasted for 16 years in Madras, and the first cinema in South India was produced in Madras, Kichagavada. And by about 1931, the era ends, silent era. By the time 124 feature films had been produced in Madras. There are also centers in Mysore, even one in Vellore. But only one film of this period has survived. Now the question is, how was the changeover from the pantomime of silent cinema to the cinema of spoken language? How was it achieved? From which source did the contents and features of talkie cinema come? This new art form, talkie cinema, totally a child of technology, totally. There are other arts, singing, music, dance, there is no need for technology there. But cinema is a total baby of technology. So how did it come about? What I am going to say is, when I say role of Devadasi tradition, I am not talking about only women, I am talking about men and women, and I am talking about the tradition. They had been traditionally attached to temples. They made a major contribution to the early talkie cinema by providing much of the content drawn from their traditional repertoire. Thereby they decided the style and content of Tamil cinema, which continues up to the present day. It was their contribution which made Tamil cinema take off. They provided the fuel for the rocket to take off, as it were. Now, imagine when Tamil cinema was born, it was despised by everyone. And when cinema was born, nobody took notice of it. The British government tried to suppress it because they were promoting their films called Empire films. The religious people stigmatized it. The government ignored it. The intellectual and writers shunned it. Bharati and Madhavaiya, who were very active in the 1990s and 20s, never mentioned cinema. Bharatiya talks about a plane landing in the island grounds in 1911. But in 1916, right opposite to Hafiz, the first Tamil silent film was screened. He didn't take notice of it. I said Tamil silent film because the characters spoke in Tamil. Only thing is, you could not hear it. So they wrote it. They had title cards. The silent cinemas were language based. That's a different story. So cinema was despised as a plebeian art form, and Devadasis made that contribution. Now this development came about by a historical coincidence. That is, as a part of the nationalist movement, a movement had gained against the practice of dedicating girls to temples. Gandhiji was supporting this movement. Periyar was supporting this movement. And from the Devadasi community, Muvalu Ramamurgam Ammayar and Muthulakshmi Reddy were in the forefront to ban this practice. Because of this legal measure, the dancers, music teachers, singers, musicians, all from the Devadasi community, they move into commercial stage. The song and dance component of Tamil cinema, which has taken many ramified forms, I'll show you some clips of it, owes its origin largely to the performance of artists from the Devadasi community. Along with actors, songwriters and musicians also came into this world. Now, I was talking about their movement into the world of commercial entertainment. They first move into drama companies. When Tamil talkie made its appearance in South India, the talkie, 1931, the most popular entertainment was stage-based. There were 241 companies, according to one count, that was traveling in the Madras Presidency. Sometimes they went up to Sri Lanka, Burma also, and stage plays. There were well-known drama companies, and when the Devadasis moved into it, they started drama companies. There was one company exclusively by women, and it was run by a Devadasi called Balamani. The legend is that she was staging a play in Kumbakonam, and a train, special train will go from Tanjavur in the evening. It was called Balamani Express. Similarly, Kamalambad, another artist from this community, Sivanagar community, ran drama companies. The selection of plays staged by these companies was limited to a few mythologicals that had been written as musicals. The playwright was called Vadyar. Vadyar means a director. He was the kingpin of the company. Vadyar of this company, he wrote songs, composed music, and also directed the play. All actors had to know singing, including the clown. The emphasis was more on singing and not on spectacle. Another interesting development took place at this time. The printing press was very active. This printing press printed the plays, the script and songs, particularly Sangarada's plays in the 1920s and 30s. Hundreds of books came. So the artist can just buy this and memorize the songs, train for the songs. Printing press played a crucial role. Let's look at this Devadasi tradition itself. Devadasi community, a group of men and women skilled in music and dance, whose life centered around the temple, played a crucial role in the cultural history of South India. They were the repository of the major music tradition of Tamil Nadu, and they performed in rituals and ceremonies. Not only in temples, but they also danced in procession when the Utsavar was taken up. The dance of the Devadasis was known variously as Sadir and Dasyata. The men were experts in instrumental music and in teaching dance. The musicians were divided broadly into two groups, Periya Melam, Tavil and Nagaswaram, and Chinna Melam, Mridangam and Harmonium, which went with dance. I was telling you about the movement against the Devadasi system, and it culminated in an act called the Devadasi Abolition Act 1924. This is when the whole community of Devadasis lose their livelihood. Suddenly, the pay from the temple stops, and the zamindars and other landlords who were the patrons, their patronage also begins to dwindle because they begin to lose their wealth. This is when the exodus took place because of losing their livelihood. instrumentalists like Mridangam players joined the drama companies, and many Devadasi artists recorded for the gramophone. At that time, very inexpensive Japanese gramophone machines have come, so gramophone was very popular. And when others hesitated to record, they came forward and recorded. They fought against a similar hesitation in acting also. Now, what is germane to our discussion is that many of them joined the drama companies and they had mastered the dramas, and when the going was good, talkie arrives. So from the stage to the screen was but a step. One of the earliest to get into cinema was K.R. Saradam. Now I would avoid listing names because it's a long list. So I met one director who made the second ever Tamil movie, Sarvottam Badami. When I talked about women artists, he said, all of them came from that community. All of them came. There was no one else. Okay. At this stage, in 1931, sound arrives. In Madras, Alam Ara is screened, the first sound films. But there is no sound recording studio in Madras. The Tamil film producers were very eager to produce films, but they did not have a recording studio. So, what they did, this absence of sound studio was a key factor in the history of Tamil cinema. First 5 years, there was no recording studio. So, filmmakers began to hire these drama companies, complete with the Vadyar instrumentalists, take them to Bombay, Kolhapur, Pune, Calcutta, and make these films. I made a list of the first 61 films made and found that all of them were popular plays from the drama companies. So, the most of the female leads in these films were women from the Isai tradition. Some of them who started there at that time, some families are still in films. There are 4th generation, 3rd generation. One is SPL Dhanalakshmi, her daughter Jyoti Lakshmi, who was acting in the 70s, and her daughter is in films now. Number of examples can be given. So when cinema was silent, they needed stuntmen, people who could jump from rooftops, who can ride fast, faster. But when sound studios came, they needed people who could sing. They needed actors who could sing, because the technique of recording songs separately and acting separately had not come. So they needed actors who could sing. So the emphasis was on singing. If you see early Jayaraj Bahadar, he will just come, stand and sing. So acting was discounted. Till then, sound recording was done in situ, even as they were acting. Thus, stage actors who were familiar with classical music found them being welcomed into the tinsel world of cinema. So I told you, because of this, they hired these groups which had Isai Vedalar artists. They were taken to Bombay or Pune. As proscenium stage was set, the camera was placed in front, and frontally the play was shot in long shots, headlong, and They had to come back very quickly because it was very expensive to stay Bombay Airport. So they finished and came. This happened for 5 years. By that time, the style of Tamil cinema and its contents had kind of formed. Let's now look at the pioneers of some Visayavadala tradition. Before that, I will tell you what I am planning to do. I will finish my talk in half an hour, show you some glimpses. Kumbakonam was the center of the Visayavadala tradition. Music teachers and dance teachers with their dance school was called Silamukura. Practice in the town. We see a number of them moving to Chennai when the demand for teachers began to grow in Chennai. Meanwhile, there was another development. Upper caste people began to learn Bharatanatyam and music. The story is some of them learned it secretly. I'll read one culture historian's quote. I quote. Matronas were traditionally members of a hereditary community of non-Brahmins, professional musicians and dancers, who made their living through the art of their exclusive domain. The dance style of their community was known as Sadir or Dasya, and it was this dance that was reconstructed and named Bharatanatyam in the 1930s as non-hereditary dancers from outside the community began learning and performing this. So they needed artists who could sing. Some of them, they were in short supply. So they made some women artists play the role of maids. The shortage was so much. This goes on till the playback technique was invented sometime in the early 40s. Though many artists of the Visayavadala tradition came into films, the most well-known of them are N.C. Vasantha Kokilam and M.S. Subbulakshmi. Vasantha Kokilam had already established a formidable reputation as a classical singer and she came into films through Chandragupta Chanakya and after films like Haridas. And of course, M.S. Subbulakshmi featured in 4 films, the most famous being Meera. Among men, I'd like to talk about Kusa Krishnamurthy, who was a playwright, a songwriter, and a scriptwriter. He was born in Kumbakonam, joined the Nawab Rajamanikam company, and comes into movies. And he wrote famous movie Andaman Kaidi, in which MGR featured, and you see some classic shots of partition in that film. He was the man who wrote the enduring song Kutram Purindavan Valkiyil Nimmadiyil in Rathakali. Singers and music composers also came from that community. The most well-known of them is C.S. Jayaraman. C.S. Jayaraman he was a singer, but he also composed music for a couple of films. He also acted in movies. And then you have, of course, Rajaratnam Pillai, who was the hero in Kalamegam, directed by Elisa Duncan. And then after the playback singing came, there were also playback singers from the tradition.